For two officers, another routine stop meant another chance to frame an unsuspecting black driver. They saw a man in a sharp suit, steady hands, calm eyes, and assumed he was powerless, just another target they could intimidate with barked orders and planted cocaine. What they didn't see was the weight beneath his shirt. A federal badge earned from 20 years dismantling drug cartels. When the cuffs clicked and the evidence bag swung in a triumphant hand, their confidence grew. But he was no victim. Their scheme had already sown the seeds of their downfall. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The autumn sun hung low in the Atlanta suburbs, casting long shadows across the well-maintained streets. Marcus Reed's fingers tapped lightly on his steering wheel, keeping time with the smooth jazz flowing from his car speakers. The melody of Take 5 helped ease the tension from a long day of DEA briefings downtown. His gray wool overcoat lay perfectly pressed on the passenger seat, a habit from his 20 years of service. The familiar weight of his badge rested against his chest under his crisp white shirt. Traffic was light on this tree-lined stretch, and Marcus allowed his mind to drift toward dinner plans. The flash of red and blue lights in his rearview mirror jolted him from his thoughts. Marcus checked his speedometer. 62 in a 60 zone. His jaw tightened as he eased his black sedan toward the curb, tires crunching on fallen leaves. Two officers approached his car, one on each side. The taller one, Officer Lawson, rapped his knuckles against Marcus's window with unnecessary force. Marcus pressed the button, lowering it smoothly. "License and registration," Lawson barked, not bothering with a greeting. His partner, Officer Briggs, hung back slightly, hand resting near his holster. "Good afternoon, officers," Marcus replied evenly, reaching slowly for his wallet. "May I ask why I've been stopped?" Lawson's face hardened. "You were swerving back there? Been drinking today?" Marcus kept his voice steady, though his pulse quickened. "No, sir, I haven't been drinking. I was driving straight as an arrow." "That's not what I saw." Lawson snatched Marcus's license and registration, studying them with exaggerated scrutiny. "Step out of the vehicle." "Officer, I don't believe that's necessary." "I said step out." Lawson's voice rose sharply. "Both hands where I can see them." Marcus recognized the dangerous edge in Lawson's tone. He'd heard it before. Not as a law enforcement officer, but as a black man who'd faced similar situations throughout his life. His training kicked in. Stay calm. Comply. Survive the moment. "I'm going to exit the vehicle slowly," Marcus announced, keeping his movements deliberate. The jazz continued to play softly in the background, now an incongruous soundtrack to the mounting tension. Officer Briggs shifted nervously, his young face betraying anxiety as Marcus unfolded his tall frame from the car. The autumn wind caught Marcus's tie, flapping it against his shirt. "Hands on the hood," Lawson commanded, his tone dripping with unearned authority. "Spread your legs." Marcus complied, feeling the cool metal beneath his palms. He noticed a woman walking her dog across the street, slow down to watch the scene unfold. She pulled out her phone, and Marcus felt a flicker of gratitude. Witnesses mattered. "My partner's going to search your vehicle," Lawson announced, beginning to pat Marcus down with unnecessary roughness. "You got anything in there we should know about?" "No, sir," Marcus replied, maintaining his composure even as Lawson's hands became more aggressive in their search. "I do not consent to a search of my vehicle." Lawson laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "Consent? That's cute. We've got probable cause. You were swerving, remember?" Through the car's open window, Marcus could hear Briggs rummaging through his vehicle. The sound of his glove compartment being yanked open. The rustle of papers. The thud of his briefcase being moved. "Officer," Marcus tried again. "I'm a federal." "Shut it!" Lawson's hand pressed harder between Marcus's shoulder blades. "You don't give the orders here." Marcus felt the familiar weight of handcuffs being removed from Lawson's belt. His mind raced through options, calculating risks. If he revealed his identity too soon, they might try to cover their tracks. If he waited too long, the situation could escalate beyond his control. The autumn wind picked up, sending leaves skittering across the pavement. More cars were slowing as they passed, drivers craning their necks to watch. Marcus counted 3 phones recording now. The jazz from his car had ended, replaced by a news update that nobody was listening to. "Hey, Derek!" Briggs called out, his voice trembling slightly. "You better come look at this." Lawson kept one hand pressed against Marcus's back as he turned toward his partner. "What have you got?" Marcus remained still, his palms flat against the hood, knowing this moment would define everything that followed. He could feel the metal of his DEA badge pressing against his chest, a reminder of who he was and what he stood for. The tension in the air thickened as Briggs emerged from the passenger side of Marcus's car. His face had gone pale, and his hands shook slightly as they gripped something Marcus couldn't see. Lawson's fingers dug harder into Marcus's shoulder. "Well, well," Lawson's voice took on a predatory edge. "What do we have here?" The wind gusted again, stronger now, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and approaching rain. Marcus remained silent, his mind cataloging every detail. The pressure of Lawson's hand, the growing crowd of onlookers, the exact words being spoken. He knew that whatever came next would need to be documented with perfect clarity. Traffic had nearly stopped now, creating an audience for what was unfolding. The woman with the dog had moved closer, her phone still recording. 2 more cars pulled to the shoulder, their occupants watching intently. The scene was set, the players in position, and Marcus Reed stood perfectly still, waiting for the next move in this dangerous game. The plastic evidence bag dangled from Lawson's fingers, sunlight catching the white powder inside. He emerged from Marcus's car with a triumphant smirk, holding the cocaine like he'd just discovered buried treasure. "Well, what do you know?" Lawson's voice carried across the street, pitched deliberately loud for the gathering audience. "Looks like we've got ourselves a drug dealer." Marcus's stomach clenched as he watched Lawson's performance. The bag hadn't been there minutes ago. He knew his car was clean. He'd checked it thoroughly that morning, as he did every day. 20 years of DEA work had taught him the importance of vigilance. "That's not mine," Marcus stated firmly, his voice carrying the weight of truth. "And you know it." Lawson circled back to where Marcus stood, still pressed against the hood. The officer made a show of examining the bag, turning it this way and that in the fading sunlight. "Nice try. But guys like you always say that." The words "guys like you" hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Marcus felt the familiar burn of injustice in his chest, but kept his breathing steady. He'd faced this kind of prejudice before, seen it destroy too many lives. But this time was different. This time, they'd picked the wrong target. "Officer Briggs," Lawson called out. "Cuff him." Briggs approached with handcuffs ready, his movements jerky and uncertain. His hands trembled slightly as he grabbed Marcus's right wrist, pulling it behind his back. The cold metal of the cuffs bit into Marcus's skin as Briggs ratcheted them too tight. "Easy with those cuffs, son," Marcus said quietly to Briggs. "They don't need to cut off circulation to do their job." Briggs hesitated, glancing at Lawson, who barked, "Ignore him! Get those cuffs on tight." More cars had stopped now. Marcus counted at least 6 people filming with their phones. A man in a business suit stood on the sidewalk, speaking urgently into his phone. 2 teenagers on bikes watched wide-eyed from across the street. "You have the right to remain silent," Lawson began, clearly enjoying himself. He roughly grabbed Marcus's shoulder, spinning him around to face the growing crowd. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Marcus watched the scene as if from outside himself, noting every detail with professional precision. The way Lawson's badge caught the light, the nervous sweat beading on Briggs's forehead, the exact position of the sun in the sky. Everything would matter later. "You know," Marcus said calmly, "there are cameras everywhere these days. People watching, recording. Makes it harder to control the narrative." Lawson's grip tightened painfully on Marcus's arm. "Is that a threat? Just an observation?" "Keep running your mouth," Lawson snarled. "See how that works out for you in booking." Briggs had moved to open the back door of their patrol car, his movements still uncertain. The young officer's face showed conflict. He knew something wasn't right, but lacked the courage to speak up. Marcus felt the weight of his DEA badge against his chest, hidden beneath his shirt. The moment to reveal it was approaching, but timing was crucial. He needed witnesses, needed the officer's true colors on full display first. "Start walking," Lawson commanded, shoving Marcus forward. The handcuffs dug deeper as Lawson pushed, making a show of controlling his dangerous suspect. Marcus stumbled slightly, catching himself. "Careful there, Officer Lawson. Wouldn't want to add excessive force to the growing list of problems here." "List of problems?" Lawson laughed harshly. "The only problem here is you thinking you can talk your way out of this. We caught you red-handed." They reached the patrol car. Briggs stood by the open door, shifting his weight from foot to foot. His discomfort was palpable as he watched Lawson's rough handling of their suspect. Marcus turned slightly, meeting Lawson's eyes. "Last chance, officer. Are you absolutely sure you want to do this?" "Do what?" Lawson sneered. "Arrest a drug dealer? Yeah, I'm pretty sure." "Tommy," Marcus said softly, addressing Briggs by his first name, "you might want to pay close attention to what happens next. Could be educational." Lawson's face darkened. "That's it. In the car, now." "Before we do that," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly to the watching crowd, "there's something you should see." Despite the awkward angle of his cuffed hands, he managed to pull his shirt aside just enough to reveal the badge hanging against his chest. "Special Agent Marcus Reed, Drug Enforcement Administration. And you too just made the biggest mistake of your careers." The effect was immediate. Lawson's grip went slack, his face draining of color. Briggs stumbled backward, nearly tripping over his own feet, his mouth opening and closing without sound. You... Lawson stuttered, his arrogance evaporating like morning dew. His hands fell away from Marcus's shoulders as if burned. The crowd had grown silent, phones still recording, witnesses to the sudden shift in power. The autumn wind rustled through the trees, sending more leaves spiraling down around them. In the distance, thunder rumbled, promising rain. Marcus stood tall despite the handcuffs, his dignity intact. He watched as the realization of what they'd done crashed over both officers. Briggs looked ready to faint, while Lawson's face had taken on a sickly gray color. "Now," Marcus said, his voice steady and clear, "would someone like to remove these handcuffs? We have a lot to discuss." The smirk on Lawson's face vanished completely, replaced by a sickly pallor. His hands fumbled with the handcuff keys, nearly dropping them twice before managing to unlock the restraints. Marcus rubbed his wrists slowly, noting the red marks where the cuffs had been too tight. "Sir, we didn't," Lawson stammered. His earlier cockiness evaporated like morning dew. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool autumn air. Briggs looked ready to throw up, his young face ashen. "Agent Reed, sir, this was just a misunderstanding. We didn't mean—" "A misunderstanding?" Marcus's voice remained calm, but carried an edge of steel. "Let's review what just happened. You conducted an illegal search of my vehicle. You planted evidence. You violated my civil rights, And you made it clear this was racially motivated. He gestured to the watching crowd, many still recording. All on camera. Lawson's eyes darted between the witnesses and Marcus, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. Listen, we can work this out. No need to. DEA protocol is very clear. Marcus cut him off. Any law enforcement officer who encounters attempted corruption or civil rights violations must report it immediately. Section 31.4 of the Field Manual. He pulled out his phone. I should probably call this in now. The two officers exchanged panicked looks. Briggs's hand trembled as he reached for his radio, fumbling it slightly before pressing the button. Dispatch, this is Officer Briggs. We need Lieutenant Denton at our location. Code 3. Copy that, the dispatcher's voice crackled back. What's the situation? Briggs's voice quavered. Tell him it's a misunderstanding that needs his immediate attention. Marcus raised an eyebrow at the word misunderstanding, but said nothing. He simply stood there, radiating quiet authority, as both officers shifted uncomfortably. The crowd had grown larger, with more phones recording the scene. Someone in the back shouted, "Get those racist cops!" "Please step back, folks," Lawson called out weakly, his earlier bravado completely gone. "This is a police matter." "Oh, it's definitely a police matter," Marcus agreed. "One that's going to require a lot of paperwork, internal affairs, federal investigation, the works." He checked his watch. "I should probably call my supervisor too. And the U.S. Attorney's Office." Briggs looked ready to faint. "Sir, please. My career. I've only been on the force 2 years. Should have thought about that before participating in criminal conspiracy," Marcus replied evenly. "Planting evidence is a federal offense. Not to mention the civil rights violations." The sound of an approaching vehicle drew their attention. A black SUV with tinted windows pulled up smoothly, its engine purring. The door opened, and Lieutenant Carl Denton stepped out with the practiced ease of someone used to taking command of difficult situations. Denton was stocky, but carried himself with authority, his salt and pepper hair neatly trimmed, his uniform pressed to perfection. His eyes were sharp and calculating as they took in the scene, the crowd with their phones, his two officers looking like scared schoolboys, and Marcus standing tall in his gray wool coat. "Afternoon, gentlemen," Denton said, his voice carrying a smooth southern charm. "Seems we have ourselves a situation here." He approached Marcus with his hand extended. "Lieutenant Carl Denton. I understand there's been some confusion with my officers." Marcus shook the offered hand, noting the firm grip, and the way Denton's eyes never wavered. "Special Agent Marcus Reed, DEA. Your officers planted cocaine in my vehicle during an illegal search. Multiple witnesses, multiple recordings." "That's a serious accusation," Denton replied, still smiling. But there was something cold in his eyes now, something that didn't match his friendly tone. "It's not an accusation. It's a fact." Marcus gestured to the evidence bag, still clutched in Lawson's hand. "The whole thing's on video. Multiple angles." Denton nodded thoughtfully, then turned to address the crowd. "Folks, we appreciate your concern, but this is a sensitive law enforcement matter. Please clear the area." A few people drifted away, but most stayed put, phones still recording. Denton's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Agent Reed," he said, turning back to Marcus, "why don't we discuss this somewhere more private? My office isn't far." "I think here is fine," Marcus replied. "In front of witnesses." Denton stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Listen, son, I understand you're upset, but you're new to our jurisdiction, and you don't understand how things work here." His tone was still friendly, but there was steel beneath the velvet. "Best to forget this ever happened, for your own good." The threat was clear, despite the polite delivery. Marcus held Denton's gaze, reading the years of entrenched power and corruption in those cold eyes. This wasn't just about two cops planting evidence anymore. This went deeper. "Is that a threat, Lieutenant?" "Just some friendly advice," Denton replied, still smiling, "from one law enforcement professional to another. Sometimes these misunderstandings can spiral out of control. Careers get damaged. Reputations get ruined. Nobody wants that." The autumn wind picked up, sending leaves skittering across the pavement. In the distance, thunder rumbled again, closer now. The gathering storm seemed fitting for the tension crackling in the air between them. Marcus kept his expression neutral, but his mind was racing. 20 years of DEA work had taught him to read between the lines, and Denton's friendly advice was setting off every alarm bell he had. "A mistake?" Marcus's voice carried just enough edge to make Denton's smile falter. "Your officers conducted an illegal search, planted evidence, and violated my civil rights. That's not a mistake, Lieutenant. That's a pattern of criminal behavior." Denton's charm didn't waver, but something hardened in his eyes. "Agent Reed, you seem like a reasonable man. Smart. Career-focused." He gestured to the dispersing crowd. "These people, they don't understand the complexities of law enforcement. The split-second decisions we have to make. Sometimes things get messy." "Messy?" Marcus's quiet tone drew Lawson and Briggs's attention. They stood awkwardly to the side, looking like children watching their parents argue. "There's nothing messy about planting evidence. That's premeditated, calculated, criminal." Thunder rumbled closer, and a few drops of rain began to fall. Denton's friendly mask slipped just a fraction. "You know how it is in our line of work," Denton said, his voice lower now. "Paperwork gets filed wrong. Evidence gets misplaced. Witnesses change their stories. Even video footage can be unreliable." He spread his hands in a gesture of mock helplessness. "The system's complicated. Things get lost in the shuffle." Marcus felt a cold anger settling in his chest. This wasn't just about two cops getting caught doing something wrong. This was systematic, practiced, refined. "How many?" Marcus asked quietly. "Excuse me, how many other people have your officers framed? How many are sitting in prison right now because of planted evidence?" A muscle twitched in Denton's jaw. The friendly mask slipped further. "That's dangerous speculation, Agent Reed. The kind that could make life very complicated for a federal agent, especially one working in our jurisdiction." "Is that right?" Marcus pulled out his phone, making sure Denton could see him typing. "I should probably add attempted intimidation of a federal officer to my report." Denton's smile vanished completely. "Listen here," he growled, stepping closer. "You're not the first hotshot who thought he could clean up our town. But trust me, son, you don't want this fight. Bad things happen to people who don't know their place." The racial undertone wasn't subtle. Marcus had heard it his whole life. That phrase about knowing your place. It made his blood boil, but he kept his voice steady. "My place," Marcus replied, letting just a hint of steel enter his tone. "My place is upholding the law. All of it. Not just the parts that are convenient for corrupt officers." Raindrops fell harder now, dotting the pavement. Denton's face darkened like the gathering storm clouds. "Last chance," Denton said softly. "Walk away. File it as a routine stop with no issues. Everyone goes home happy." His eyes narrowed. "Or push this, and find out just how deep the rabbit hole goes. Your choice." Marcus looked at Officers Lawson and Briggs, still hovering uncertainly nearby. They avoided his gaze, suddenly very interested in their shoes. How many times had they done this? How many lives had they ruined with planted evidence and false arrests? "You're right about one thing," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly despite the falling rain. "This is my choice, and I choose to do my job." He held Denton's gaze. "The DEA takes corruption very seriously, Lieutenant, especially when it involves drug evidence being planted." "The DEA?" Denton's laugh was cold. "Boy, you really don't understand how things work around here, do you? One phone call from me, and your supervisors will be drowning in complaints about you. Anonymous tips about your misconduct, reports of excessive force, allegations of corruption." He spread his hands. "Who do you think they'll believe? A respected police lieutenant with 25 years of service, or the angry black agent making wild accusations?" The threat hung in the air between them. Marcus felt the weight of it. The years of systemic racism and corruption pressed into those words. But he didn't flinch. "You're used to people backing down," Marcus observed. "Used to them being afraid. But here's something you should understand about me, Lieutenant." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "I've spent my entire career fighting people like you, and I'm very, very good at my job." Rain was falling steadily now, soaking through Marcus's wool coat. Neither man moved. "Get in your car and drive away," Denton said finally, all pretense of friendliness gone. "Forget this happened. Or don't. Your choice." His smile returned, cold as ice. "But remember, you were warned." Marcus walked back to his car without another word, feeling their eyes on him. As he slid behind the wheel, he caught a glimpse of Lawson and Briggs in his rearview mirror, already huddling with Denton, no doubt planning their next move. The engine purred to life, and Marcus pulled away from the curb. His hands were steady on the wheel, but his jaw was clenched tight enough to hurt. They thought he would back down, let them bury this like they'd buried so many other incidents. They thought wrong. Marcus's house was quiet, except for the soft clink of ice against glass. He sat in his home office, the evening shadows growing longer as he poured 2 fingers of bourbon. The amber liquid caught the light from his desk lamp, and he watched it swirl as he replayed the afternoon's events in his mind. The traffic stop hadn't been random. The way Lawson and Briggs operated, it was too practiced, too smooth. And Denton's arrival, his carefully worded threats. They'd done this before. Many times. Marcus took a slow sip, letting the bourbon warm his throat. His gray wool overcoat hung on the door, still damp from the rain. The sight of it reminded him of Denton's smug face, that condescending tone when he'd said, "Boy." 20 years in law enforcement, and some things never changed. His phone buzzed on the desk, disrupting his thoughts. The caller ID showed James Chen, a fellow DEA agent he'd worked with for years. Marcus's stomach tightened as he answered. "Reed," he said, keeping his voice neutral. "Marcus, we need to talk." Chen's voice was low, urgent. "Something's happening. Internal Affairs just received 3 separate complaints about you. They're saying you've been heavy-handed during arrests, maybe even planting evidence yourself." Marcus's hand tightened around his glass. "Already? It's been less than 4 hours. You know how it works." "Anonymous tips, concerned citizens, all very official-looking." Chen paused. "What did you step in, Marcus?" "Corrupt cops in Clayton County. Caught them planting drugs during a traffic stop." Marcus took another sip. "Their lieutenant tried to convince me to forget about it." "Let me guess. Lieutenant Carl Denton?" Marcus sat up straighter. "You know him?" "By reputation. He's got friends in high places. Politicians, judges, maybe even some federal connections." Chen's voice dropped lower. "Word is, his department has an unusually high drug arrest rate. Lots of plea deals, not many cases going to trial. Because the evidence is planted," Marcus said, pieces clicking into place. "They're targeting people who can't fight back. Marcus, listen to me. These complaints they're filing, they're laying groundwork. Next will come the media leaks. suggestions of misconduct. They'll try to destroy your credibility before you can expose them. Marcus stood, walking to his window. The street outside was dark now, peaceful. How many people had driven through this county, he wondered, only to have their lives destroyed by Denton's corrupt operation? They're efficient, Marcus said. I'll give them that. But they made a mistake targeting me. What are you going to do? Marcus returned to his desk, opening his laptop. Fight back, but smart. These guys are used to bullying people who can't defend themselves. Time to show them what it's like when someone punches back. Be careful, Chen warned. Denton's got a reputation for making problems disappear. I appreciate the heads up, James. I owe you one. After hanging up, Marcus pulled up a secure browser and began accessing police databases. His security clearance as a DEA agent gave him access to records most people couldn't see. He started with Lawson and Briggs. Let's see how dirty you really are, he muttered, fingers flying across the keyboard. The data started painting a picture. Over the past 3 years, Lawson and Briggs had made an unusually high number of drug arrests, mostly young black men, mostly during traffic stops. The amounts of drugs were always similar, just enough to qualify for serious charges, but not enough to trigger federal involvement. Marcus opened a new document, starting to log patterns. The locations clustered around certain neighborhoods. The charges were always nearly identical. The evidence was always found in similar places, under seats, in glove compartments, spots easy to plant something during a search. He pulled up court records next. Most cases ended in plea deals. Public defenders, overwhelmed with cases, advised their clients to plead guilty rather than risk longer sentences at trial. The few who did fight the charges mysteriously had evidence go missing, or witnesses change their stories. Marcus's bourbon sat forgotten as he dug deeper. He started a timeline, mapping out when Lawson and Briggs had started working together, when their arrest numbers suddenly spiked. He noted the judges who handled their cases, the prosecutors who pushed the plea deals. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Chen. 2 more complaints just came in. They're saying you've been aggressive with informants, maybe even taking kickbacks. Marcus's jaw clenched. They were moving fast, trying to bury him in allegations before he could build his case. But they didn't realize what they were dealing with. He'd spent his career building cases against drug cartels, people who had resources and connections these local cops couldn't imagine. He opened another database, this one tracking asset forfeitures. Denton's department showed an unusual pattern there, too. Lots of seized vehicles, cash, and property from drug arrests. Money that went straight into department coffers. The pieces were forming a pattern, one that made his blood boil. This wasn't just about racist cops harassing black drivers. This was a systematic operation. Target vulnerable people, plant evidence, push plea deals, seize assets, rinse and repeat. Marcus pulled out a fresh legal pad, starting to map out connections. He'd need more than just statistics to bring them down. He'd need witnesses, documentation, maybe even someone on the inside willing to talk. His eyes fell on Officer Briggs's personnel file. The rookie had looked nervous during the stop, almost sick when Lawson found the planted drugs. Maybe there was something there to work with. The courthouse stood like a stern guardian in the early morning light, its stone columns casting long shadows across the steps. Marcus adjusted his tie and straightened his shoulders before entering. He'd traded his signature wool overcoat for a sharp navy suit. Today he needed to look every inch the federal agent he was. The archives section occupied the basement level, a maze of fluorescent-lit corridors lined with filing cabinets and document boxes. The air smelled of old paper and dust. At this early hour, the space was nearly empty, perfect for the kind of digging Marcus needed to do. He approached the front desk where Mrs. Alvarez sat organizing papers. She was a petite woman in her late 40s, with reading glasses perched on her nose and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her eyes widened slightly when he showed his credentials. "I need to review arrest records and case files," Marcus said quietly. "Specifically those involving Officers Lawson and Briggs." Mrs. Alvarez's hands paused over her paperwork. "That's quite a lot of files. They're very active officers. I'm sure they are. I'd like to start with the last 6 months." She nodded and led him to a small research room. "I'll bring what we have." Box after box arrived, filled with manila folders and police reports. Marcus settled into a systematic review, creating a spreadsheet on his laptop. Names, dates, locations, charges, patterns began emerging within the first hour. Jerome Washington, 19, pulled over for a broken taillight. Cocaine found under the passenger seat. Michael Taylor, 22, stopped for rolling through a stop sign. Heroin in the glove compartment. David Brooks, 20, routine license check. Meth in the trunk. Young black men. Minor traffic violations. Drugs conveniently discovered during searches. The similarities were striking. Marcus noted how the evidence was always found in easily accessible places, perfect for planting. The amounts were consistent, too, just enough to ensure serious charges without triggering federal jurisdiction. Mrs. Alvarez brought another box, lingering this time. She glanced at his notes, then at the door, before speaking softly. "There's something else you should know." Marcus looked up, keeping his expression neutral. "I'm listening." She sat down, hands fidgeting with her reading glasses. "I've worked here 15 years. I know what normal police paperwork looks like. Their reports. There are irregularities. What kind of irregularities? The timing, for one thing. Sometimes the evidence processing forms are dated before the actual arrests. And the language they use? It's too similar across different cases, like they're copying and pasting." Marcus leaned forward. "Have you mentioned this to anyone?" Mrs. Alvarez's face tightened. "Once, to my supervisor. The next day, Lieutenant Denton visited my office. He was very concerned about my job security, asked about my daughter's college tuition. The threat was clear." Marcus felt a familiar anger rising but kept his voice gentle. "How long has this been going on?" "It started about 3 years ago, when Lawson transferred here. The number of drug arrests shot up. Briggs joined him last year. He was fresh from the academy." She paused. "The worst part is the families. They come here, trying to get copies of the reports, trying to understand what happened to their sons, their brothers. Most can't afford good lawyers. They take plea deals because they're scared." Marcus pulled out a business card and wrote his personal cell number on the back. "If you think of anything else, or if anyone pressures you about this conversation, call me. Anytime." She took the card with trembling fingers. "Be careful. Lieutenant Denton has friends everywhere. Judges, prosecutors, even some federal agents." "I'm starting to understand that." Marcus turned back to the files. "Could you pull the records from 3 years ago? When Lawson first arrived?" More boxes appeared. Marcus dove deeper, mapping out how the operation had evolved. Early cases were sloppier, with more defendants fighting the charges. But over time, the system had been refined. The reports got cleaner, the evidence more consistent, the plea deals more efficient. His phone buzzed. Another text from Chen. 3 more complaints filed against you. They're moving fast." Marcus ignored it, focusing on a particular case that caught his eye. A young man named Andre Wilson had refused to take a plea deal, insisting the drugs weren't his. Mysteriously, key evidence had gone missing before trial. The case was dismissed, but Wilson lost his job and spent 6 months in jail before being cleared. Mrs. Alvarez returned with coffee. "Found something interesting?" "Maybe. The Wilson case. What happened to him?" Her face darkened. He moved away after the trial. His mother still comes in sometimes, asking questions. She never believed the official story. Marcus made a note of the name. Victims who fought back. Families who wouldn't stay quiet. These could be valuable allies. The morning stretched into afternoon. Marcus's eyes burned from reading, but the picture was becoming clearer. This wasn't just about racist cops harassing black drivers. It was a carefully constructed system of oppression, using drug charges to destroy lives and enrich the department through asset forfeitures. When he finally stood to leave, his back aching from hours of hunching over files, Mrs. Alvarez handed him a thick folder. "These are copies of the irregularities I noticed, the ones I was too afraid to report." Marcus took the folder, feeling its weight. "Thank you. I know this isn't easy. She glanced around nervously. "Just make it count." He nodded, tucking the folder under his arm. As he climbed the stairs out of the archives, each step felt heavier than the last. The evidence was there, but so was the scope of what he was facing. Not just two corrupt officers, but an entire system designed to protect them. Outside, dark clouds were gathering, matching his mood. The folder under his arm contained enough patterns to confirm his suspicions, enough irregularities to justify a deeper investigation. But it also represented dozens of lives ruined, families torn apart, communities terrorized. Marcus pulled up to a modest one-story house with well-tended flower beds and a small American flag by the door. The home of Gloria Jackson sat in a quiet neighborhood where children's bikes lay scattered on front lawns. He checked the address again, straightened his tie, and grabbed his notepad. Gloria opened the door before he could knock. She was a small woman in her 50s, with tired eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Agent Reed, thank you for coming." Her voice was soft but dignified. The living room was spotless, with family photos covering every wall. College graduation pictures, sports trophies, and academic awards told the story of a family that valued education and hard work. Gloria gestured to a worn armchair while she settled on the couch. "Tell me about Tyrone," Marcus said gently. Gloria's hands twisted in her lap. "My boy was never in trouble. Never. He worked 2 jobs to save for college. The morning they arrested him, he was headed to a job interview at the bank." Tears welled in her eyes. "He wore his best suit, the one we bought for his high school graduation." Marcus nodded, letting her continue. "They said they found drugs in his car, but Tyrone never touched drugs. He saw what they did to his cousin Jerome, swore he'd never go down that path." She reached for a tissue. 10 years. "They gave my baby 10 years, told him if he didn't take the plea deal, they'd make it 20. Marcus studied a recent photo of Tyrone, a young man with bright eyes and an easy smile, wearing a suit and tie. Did anything seem unusual about the arrest? Everything. The officers who stopped him, Lawson and Briggs, they didn't even give a reason at first. Then they said his taillight was out, but we checked that car every week. Tyrone was careful about things like that." Gloria's voice hardened. "They tore his car apart, made him sit on the curb in his good suit. When they found the drugs, they were laughing." The pattern was familiar. Marcus made notes, his jaw tight. "Has Tyrone had any problems in prison?" "He writes me every week, stays positive, takes classes. But—" Gloria stood and retrieved a letter from a drawer. In his last letter, he mentioned guards pressuring him to stop filing appeals, said they could make things difficult if he didn't stay quiet. Marcus read the letter, noting names and dates. The same pressure tactics, the same threats. "I visit him when I can afford the bus ticket," Gloria continued. "It breaks my heart seeing him in that place. He was going to be somebody, Agent Reed. Now his life is just waiting." After leaving Gloria's house, Marcus drove to the home of the Martinez family. Their son Carlos was serving 8 years on similar charges. Mrs. Martinez met him at the door with coffee and determination. Carlos was a mentor at the youth center, she said, showing Marcus pictures of her son working with kids. The police claimed he was dealing to teenagers. It made me sick. He spent his free time keeping kids away from drugs. The living room was smaller than Gloria's, but just as neat. A half-finished college application lay on the coffee table. Carlos was filling this out the night before, Mrs. Martinez explained. He wanted to study social work. The next house belonged to the Williams family. Their daughter Tracy had been driving her younger brother home from basketball practice when Lawson and Briggs pulled them over. Only Tracy was arrested. The drugs mysteriously appeared in her purse after the search. 17 years old, Mr. Williams said, his voice rough with emotion. Honor roll student. Now she's got a record that'll follow her forever. House after house, the stories piled up. The Brown family's eldest son stopped while driving to church. The Robinsons' daughter arrested on her way to work. Each family showed Marcus school records, character references, proof of their children's innocence that never made it to court. At the Chen household, Mrs. Chen served tea while describing how her son David's arrest had affected their entire family. "The shame in our community," she whispered. "Nobody believes us when we say the drugs weren't his. His father had a heart attack from the stress." The sun was setting when Marcus reached the last house on his list. The Thompson family lived in a small apartment above a convenience store. Mrs. Thompson worked night shifts as a nurse. Her husband had died years ago. Their son Michael was 6 months into a 12-year sentence. Michael was raising his little sister while I worked. Mrs. Thompson explained as a young girl played quietly in the corner. He never left her alone, never got into trouble. Then one night, they stopped him coming home from the grocery store. The familiar pattern, a routine stop, an aggressive search, drugs appearing as if by magic. Michael took the plea deal because he was worried about who would take care of his sister if he got a longer sentence. Standing on the Thompsons' porch afterward, Marcus watched neighborhood children playing in the street. Their laughter carried on the evening air, innocent and unaware. A basketball bounced on cracked concrete. Somewhere, a mother called her kids in for dinner. "They think they're untouchable," Marcus whispered to himself. "Let's see." In his car, he reviewed his notes. 12 families visited, 12 lives destroyed. Each case file bulged with proof of innocence that never mattered, dreams derailed by planted evidence and forced confessions. The names and faces blurred together, a tapestry of systematic injustice woven by Lawson, Briggs, and their protectors. But there was something else in those living rooms, something that transcended the pain and anger. Hope. These families hadn't given up. They kept their children's rooms ready, maintained photo albums, saved newspaper clippings about wrongful convictions. They were waiting for someone to listen, someone to care, someone to fight back. Marcus parked his car outside a sleek downtown Atlanta office building. The brass plate beside the entrance read, "Johnson and Associates, Civil Rights Litigation." He adjusted his tie, gathered his files, and headed inside. The receptionist eyed his DEA badge suspiciously before buzzing him through. The office buzzed with energy. Young paralegals rushed between cubicles, phones rang constantly, and the walls displayed framed newspaper headlines about civil rights victories. Leah Johnson's corner office matched her reputation. Awards and law degrees competed for wall space, with photos of protest marches and courtroom victories. She stood as Marcus entered, a striking woman in her mid-30s wearing a tailored navy suit, her natural hair styled in neat twists. "Agent Reed!" Her handshake was firm, professional. "Your message mentioned police corruption. You have 15 minutes to convince me this isn't a waste of time. She gestured to a chair while settling behind her desk. Marcus placed his files on her desk. 12 families, all with children serving time for drug possession, all arrested by the same 2 officers, all with planted evidence. Leah's expression remained neutral as she opened the first file. Police plant evidence all the time, Agent Reed. What makes these cases special? Because I'm their latest target. Marcus described the traffic stop, the planted cocaine, Lieutenant Denton's threats. They didn't know I was DEA. Now they're trying to bury me before I can expose them. And why come to me? Leah looked up from the files, studying him carefully. Your reputation. The Thompson case, last year, you took on 3 departments and won. The Jenkins lawsuit that exposed racial profiling in traffic stops. You don't back down. A slight smile crossed her face. Flattery noted. But these cases are expensive, Agent Reed. Time-consuming. And Lieutenant Denton has friends in high places. Judges, prosecutors, politicians. I have evidence. Marcus pulled out his laptop, showing her surveillance photos of Lawson and Briggs meeting known drug dealers. Bank records showing unusual deposits. Witness statements from courthouse employees about missing evidence. Pattern analysis of their arrests. 92% young black men, most with no prior records. Leah leaned forward, her skepticism giving way to interest. The DEA teaches you to be thorough. I'm good at my job. Marcus's voice was steady. These officers are destroying lives and their superiors are covering it up. Someone needs to stop them. You realize what you're asking? Leah stood, pacing behind her desk. Taking on corrupt cops is dangerous enough. But if Denton has the connections you say he does, this could get ugly. Your career, your reputation, everything could be at risk. Already is. Marcus met her gaze. They're building a case against me right now. False complaints, doctored reports. Soon they'll find more evidence, maybe enough to arrest me. I need to move first. Leah picked up a photo of Tyrone Jackson in his graduation suit. These families? You've spoken to them? Spent yesterday visiting each one. Good kids, bright futures, all derailed by planted drugs. Their parents still believe in justice, still hope someone will listen. Justice is expensive. Leah's tone was matter-of-fact. And slow. And the system is designed to protect itself. That's why I need you. Marcus leaned forward. You know how to fight the system. How to make it work for the people it's supposed to protect. Leah returned to her desk, spreading out the files. If I take this case, I need everything. Every shred of evidence, every witness statement, every inconsistency in their reports. Nothing held back. You'll have it all. Marcus nodded. Plus whatever else I can dig up. And you understand the risks? Her eyes narrowed. Denton won't play fair. He'll come after you, your career, maybe even your family. These cases get ugly fast. Marcus smiled slightly. I don't scare easy. You should. Leah's voice was serious. Fear keeps you sharp, makes you triple-check your evidence, verify your sources, protect your witnesses. Fearless people make mistakes. Then, let's say I'm cautiously determined. Marcus met her gaze. These families deserve justice. Those officers deserve consequences. And Denton needs to learn he's not above the law. Leah studied him for a long moment, then pulled out a legal pad. Tell me everything again, from the beginning. Every detail of your traffic stop. Everything Denton said. I want it all. For the next hour, Marcus walked her through his experience and findings. Leah took detailed notes, asking sharp questions, probing for weaknesses in the case. Her initial skepticism transformed into focused intensity. One last question. She set down her pen. Why risk everything? You've got a good career, respect, stability. Why put it all on the line for this? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Because 20 years ago, I was Tyrone Jackson. Clean record, bright future, wrong place, wrong time. The only difference was my uncle, a lawyer who fought like hell to prove my innocence. Without him, I'd be another statistic. These families don't have that advantage. Leah nodded slowly, then stood and extended her hand. All right, Agent Reed, let's go to war. Their handshake was firm, a sealed pact between two fighters who understood the battle ahead. As they began discussing strategy, neither doubted that their alliance would shake Atlanta's power structure to its core. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as midnight approached in Leah's office. Empty coffee cups littered her desk, and case files spread across every surface like fallen autumn leaves. Marcus sat in a leather chair, his tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, studying arrest records while Leah paced, yellow legal pad in hand. Here's another one, Marcus said, holding up a file. James Martinez, 19, honor student at Georgia State. Arrested by Lawson and Briggs last March. Same story, routine traffic stop, mysterious discovery of drugs. Leah stopped pacing and leaned over his shoulder. Let me guess. The search was conducted without consent, and the drugs were found in a spot that had already been checked. Under the passenger seat. Marcus nodded, rubbing his tired eyes. Just like my stop. Just like Tyrone Jackson's case. They're not even trying to be creative. They don't need to be. Leah grabbed a marker and added Martinez's name to her whiteboard timeline. Red strings connected similar cases, creating a web of corruption. The system's designed to take their word over the victims. Who's going to believe a black college kid over two decorated officers? Marcus stood, stretching his back. Look at the timing of these arrests. They're too regular, almost like they're hitting quotas. Monthly quotas? Leah studied the dates. No, these cluster around performance reviews and budget meetings. Denton's using these arrests to boost his precinct's statistics, targeting people least likely to fight back effectively. Marcus's jaw tightened. Young, black, limited resources for legal defense, perfect victims. Leah grabbed her phone. Time to call in some favors. Your DEA connections might shed light on Denton's operation. Marcus pulled out his secure phone, stepping away to make calls. The office fell quiet except for hushed conversations and keyboard clicks as Leah dug deeper into precinct records. 20 minutes later, Marcus returned, his face grim. Got some interesting intel from my narcotics task force contacts. Seems Denton's precinct has a curious blind spot when it comes to certain neighborhoods. What kind of blind spot? Leah looked up from her computer. The kind where real drug operations flourish undisturbed. Marcus pulled up a map on his laptop. See these areas? Heavy drug traffic, but minimal arrests. Meanwhile, they're pulling over college kids and workers in middle-class neighborhoods. They're protecting the actual dealers? Leah's eyes narrowed. Better. Marcus opened another file on his phone. My contact sent over some surveillance photos. Look familiar? Leah leaned in, studying the image. It showed Lieutenant Denton in plain clothes, meeting with a known drug dealer outside a warehouse. When was this taken? 3 months ago. DEA's been building a case, but they can't figure out why their operations keep getting compromised. Marcus swiped through more photos. Denton's playing both sides. He protects the real dealers while arresting innocent people to make it look like he's tough on crime. The perfect cover. Leah started pacing again, energy renewed. He keeps the drug trade flowing, probably gets a cut of the profits, while padding his arrest statistics with fake busts. The brass sees high numbers, the dealers keep their territory, and innocent people go to prison. Marcus nodded. And anyone who questions it gets shut down, like he tried to do with me. This is bigger than just clearing your name now. Leah grabbed another file. We're looking at systematic corruption, civil rights violations, conspiracy, and RICO charges if we can prove the connection to drug trafficking. Marcus pulled up more files on his laptop. My contact mentioned unusual deposits in offshore accounts. If we can trace those, we'll need more than circumstantial evidence. Leah scribbled rapidly on her legal pad. Judges in these cases. Any patterns? Marcus checked his notes. 3 judges handled most of these cases, all appointed during Denton's time as lieutenant, all with unusually high conviction rates for drug possession. Political connections. Leah added names to her whiteboard. Denton mentioned having friends in high places. We need to map out every relationship, every connection. They worked in focused silence, cross-referencing cases, building connections. The whiteboard filled with names, dates, and links. A pattern emerged, a complex web of corruption with Denton at its center. Look at this. Marcus pointed to a cluster of cases. Every time a real drug bust gets close to Denton's protected territory, there's suddenly a high-profile arrest somewhere else. Perfect distraction. He's playing the media, too. Leah pulled up newspaper archives. These arrests always make headlines. Tough cop cleans up streets. Meanwhile, the real dealers operate freely. The scope of Denton's operation became clearer with each connection they made. The corruption reached into the courts, the prosecutor's office, even local politics. Every piece they uncovered revealed a system more rotten than they'd initially suspected. This isn't just about dirty cops anymore. Leah's voice was tight with anger. This is about a whole corrupt machine that profits from destroying black lives. Marcus studied the whiteboard, his expression hard. Denton's just the visible part. Behind him, there's judges, politicians, maybe even federal officials. Leah moved to her desk, picking up the thick file containing all their evidence so far. The weight of it, physical and metaphorical, seemed to energize her. She slapped it shut with decisive force, turning to face Marcus. "If we nail him," she said, her voice filled with determination, "we don't just free victims, we shake the whole system." Marcus adjusted his tie, standing before the bathroom mirror in his DEA office. Today was the day. They were going public with their findings. His phone buzzed, a text from Leah confirming their press conference at 2 p.m. Everything was ready. He walked to his desk, gathering the files they'd prepared. Colleagues passed by, nodding as usual. The morning felt normal, ordinary, until it wasn't. "Read!" His supervisor, Agent Thompson, burst from his office. "My office. Now!" Marcus followed, noticing the TV mounted on the wall. Channel 5 News was running a breaking story. His stomach dropped as he saw his photo on the screen. "Turn it up," Thompson ordered. The reporter's voice filled the room. "Breaking news. Federal agent accused of evidence tampering. Sources reveal DEA Special Agent Marcus Reed allegedly falsified evidence in multiple drug cases, calling into question dozens of convictions." Marcus's throat went dry. The report continued, showing doctored documents, his signature on evidence logs that he'd never signed, dates that didn't match, case numbers that looked wrong. "Care to explain?" Thompson's face was stone. "Those documents are fake," Marcus said firmly. "This is retaliation. I've been investigating." "Save it." Thompson held up his hand. "Internal Affairs is already on their way. Badge and gun. Now." Marcus's hands felt heavy as he surrendered his weapon and credentials. Faces peered through the office windows, whispering. People he'd worked with for years now looked at him with suspicion. "Pending investigation, you're suspended without pay," Thompson said. "Go home, Reed. Don't leave town." The walk through the office was the longest of his life. Colleagues turned away as he passed. Only his partner, Sarah Chen, met his eyes, concern evident on her face. But even she stayed silent. Outside, reporters had already gathered. Camera flashes burst like lightning as he pushed through them to his car. "Agent Reed, how long have you been falsifying evidence? How many innocent people are in prison because of you?" The irony was bitter enough to choke on. His phone rang. Leah. "They're killing the press conference," she said, her voice tight. "My firm's partners are spooked. They're telling me to back off." "Denton moved first," Marcus said, starting his car. "He's trying to destroy my credibility before we can expose him." "This is bad, Marcus. These documents look real. They've got dates, case numbers, everything." "He must have someone inside the DEA helping him." Marcus pulled onto the street, noticed a news van following. "Someone with access to our systems. Go home. Lay low. Let me work my contacts. See what I can salvage." Home wasn't any better. His neighbors, usually friendly, hurried inside when he pulled up. Mrs. Rodriguez, who'd brought him Christmas cookies every year for a decade, actually closed her curtains when he looked her way. Inside, his phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Text messages from unknown numbers. "Dirty cop getting what he deserves. How many lives did you ruin? Hope you rot in prison." Email after email from reporters requesting comments. Social media notifications piling up. People he'd never met condemning him, sharing the news story, calling for his prosecution. The sun set, but Marcus couldn't bring himself to turn on any lights. He sat in his dark kitchen, the badge he'd surrendered earlier lying on the table like a dead thing. The moonlight caught its surface, making the metal gleam dully. His doorbell rang. Heart racing, he approached cautiously. Through the peephole, he saw Dave Martinez, James Martinez's father, the man whose son was serving time because of Lawson and Briggs. Marcus opened the door. "Mr. Martinez." "I trusted you," Martinez's voice cracked. "You said you'd help my boy. Now I find out you're just like them." He shook his head, tears in his eyes. "James had a future. He was going to be an engineer." "The news story isn't true," Marcus tried to explain. "I'm being set up." "Save it." Martinez turned away. "I should have known better than to trust the system. Any part of it." The door closed heavily. Marcus returned to his dark kitchen, the weight of despair pressing down on his shoulders. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. The message chilled his blood. "Drop it, or next time it won't be a bag. It'll be a body." More messages followed. "We know where you live. Accidents happen every day. Think about your choices." Marcus stared at his badge on the table, remembering the day he'd earned it. He'd believed then that the system could be fixed from within, that good people could make a difference. Now that same system was being used to destroy him. His home phone rang. Few people had that number. He let it go to voicemail, listened as it played through the speaker. "Marcus?" It was Sarah Chen's voice, barely a whisper. "Don't trust anyone at the office right now. Someone's going through your old case files, pulling things. Be careful." The message clicked off, leaving him in silence again. Outside, a car drove by slowly, its headlights sweeping across his kitchen walls. Marcus stayed still, watching until it passed. His cell phone buzzed one more time. Another unknown number. "Last warning. Back off, or the next headline won't be about your career. It'll be about your funeral." Marcus picked up his badge, feeling its weight. Everything he'd worked for, everything he'd believed in, now being used against him. In the darkness of his kitchen, surrounded by threats and abandoned by friends, he faced the reality of just how far Denton's influence reached, and just how alone he truly was. 3 days passed like a blur. Marcus barely left his house, surviving on coffee and takeout delivered to his door. The news cycle hadn't let up. If anything, the accusations had grown worse. Every hour brought new revelations about his supposed corruption. His living room became a cave of isolation. Blinds drawn, TV off, phone silenced. Empty containers littered the coffee table. The man who'd once commanded respect in federal briefings now sat in darkness, his confidence shattered. The doorbell rang. Marcus ignored it, like he had every other time. Then came Leah's voice. "Marcus Reed, open this door right now, or I swear I'll stand here yelling until your whole neighborhood comes out to watch." He could picture her, hands on hips, that fierce look in her eyes. Sighing, he shuffled to the door. "You look terrible," she said, pushing past him into the house. She wrinkled her nose at the mess. "And it smells like something died in here." "What do you want, Leah?" His voice was rough from disuse. She yanked open the blinds, letting in painful afternoon light. "I want you to stop hiding. This isn't the Marcus Reed I know, the one who scared those corrupt cops just by showing his badge. That Marcus Reed is gone." He slumped onto his couch. "They won. They destroyed my reputation, my career, everything I spent my life building." Leah sat across from him, leaning forward. "You're really going to let them win? Let them keep destroying lives while you sit here feeling sorry for yourself? What else can I do?" He gestured at the TV, muted but still showing his face. "Nobody believes me anymore. I'm toxic. Even the families we were trying to help think I'm just another dirty cop." "Mrs. Jackson doesn't think that." Marcus looked up. "What?" "Tyrone's mother. I visited her yesterday. She's still standing by you. Says her son writes about you in his letters. Talks about how you're the first person in the system who ever tried to help him." Something stirred in Marcus's chest, but he pushed it down. "One person doesn't change anything." "No?" Leah pulled out her phone, scrolled through messages. "The Martinez family called me. They want to apologize for doubting you. The Williams family, too. People are starting to see through Denton's lies. It doesn't matter. The evidence they planted is falling apart." Leah's eyes gleamed. "Those documents? They made mistakes. Dates don't match DEA records. Signatures don't hold up under expert analysis. We can fight this, Marcus, but not if you're in here hiding." Marcus stood, pacing. "You don't understand. They threatened to kill me, Leah. Not just me. Anyone who helps me. I can't put more people at risk." "People are already at risk." Leah's voice rose. "Every day Denton and his crew are out there. More innocent lives get destroyed. You're not protecting anyone by giving up. You're just making it easier for them to keep doing it." Before Marcus could respond, someone knocked. They both tensed. Marcus approached the door cautiously, checked through the peephole. Just his mail carrier. He opened the door, took the small stack of letters. Most were hate mail. He'd gotten good at recognizing the handwriting, but one envelope was different. Prison stationery. His hands shook slightly as he opened it. "Dear Agent Reed, I hope this reaches you. My mom told me what's happening. I want you to know I believe in you. In here, we see corrupt cops all the time. But you're different. You actually tried to help. That means something. I know it's hard. Some days in here, I want to give up too. But then I think about my mom, how she never stops fighting for me. And I think about you, investigating when nobody else would. Don't let them win, sir. We need people like you out there. Thank you for trying." Marcus read the letter twice, then handed it to Leah. She read in silence. "That kid," Marcus's voice was thick, "is sitting in prison because of cops like Denton, because the system is rigged against him. And he's writing to encourage me?" Leah watched him carefully. "What are you going to do about it?" Marcus walked to his bedroom. The gray wool overcoat hung in his closet, the same one he'd worn the day Lawson and Briggs pulled him over. He put it on, went to his bathroom mirror. His reflection showed the wear of the past few days. Stubble, dark circles under his eyes, a defeated slump to his shoulders. But as he straightened the coat, muscle memory took over. His posture improved. His jaw set firmly. They think they can bury me with fake documents? He smoothed the coat's lapels. I've got 20 years of DEA experience. I know how to follow money, how to track connections, how to find the weak links in an organization. Now that sounds more like the Marcus Reed I know. Leah smiled. They want to play dirty? Marcus's voice was low, determined. Time to fight dirty. He turned from the mirror, mind already racing with possibilities. Every criminal enterprise had its weakness. Every corrupt system had its pressure points. Denton thought he was untouchable because he controlled the official channels. But Marcus hadn't spent his career taking down drug cartels by playing nice. He knew how to work in the shadows, how to build cases piece by piece until they were impossible to ignore, how to make people nervous enough to turn on each other. The fire he'd lost was back, burning cold and focused. Denton and his crew had made a critical mistake. They'd pushed him to a point where he had nothing left to lose. Looking at Tyrone's letter again, Marcus felt the last traces of demoralization burn away. They'd tried to destroy him to protect their operation. Instead, they'd only freed him to fight without restraint. 2 weeks after Tyrone's letter arrived, Mount Zion Baptist Church buzzed with nervous energy. The old wooden pews were packed. Camera crews from local news stations lined the back wall. Marcus stood at the side of the pulpit, watching families file in. Mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, all touched by Denton's corruption. Leah paced near the altar, reviewing her notes. She'd convinced these families to speak out, to share their stories publicly. Many had been hesitant, fearing retaliation. But seeing others step forward had created a snowball effect. "You ready?" Marcus asked her quietly. She nodded, straightening her blazer. "These people are scared, but determined. Just like we talked about, let them tell their stories first. Build the emotional connection. Then hit them with the evidence." Mrs. Jackson was first to speak. Her hands trembled as she gripped the podium, but her voice rang clear through the church's sound system. "My son Tyrone was 19 when they arrested him. Honor student. Basketball scholarship waiting for him. Officers Lawson and Briggs claimed they found drugs in his car during a traffic stop." She paused, dabbing her eyes. "The same traffic stop story they used on dozens of our children." Marcus scanned the crowd. Local reporters scribbled in notepads. Smartphones recorded everything. In the back, he spotted 2 uniformed officers, probably Denton's eyes and ears. One by one, families approached the podium. Their stories followed the same pattern: routine stops, planted evidence, pressure to plead guilty, lives destroyed. Each account built on the last, painting a picture of systematic abuse. Maria Martinez described how her husband lost his business after his arrest. The Williams family showed photos of their son's college graduation, a ceremony he attended in handcuffs because Lawson and Briggs claimed they found cocaine in his textbooks. As the stories continued, Marcus noticed a shift in the room. The initial skepticism in reporters' eyes turned to genuine interest. Smartphones stayed up longer. More cameras flashed. Leah took the podium next. "These aren't isolated incidents," she declared. "This is a pattern of corruption that goes straight to the top. Lieutenant Carl Denton hasn't just protected bad officers. He's actively participated in destroying lives to protect his real business interests." She nodded to Marcus. This was the moment they'd planned for. He stepped forward, holding a thick manila envelope. 3 days ago, I received these documents from concerned colleagues at the DEA. His voice carried authority. Years of federal agent training evident in every word. They show Lieutenant Denton's connection to the very drug trade he claims to fight. Marcus pulled out the first document, a surveillance photo showing Denton meeting with known drug dealers. This was taken 6 months ago. The same week, officers Lawson and Briggs arrested Thomas Williams for possession. More photos followed. Bank records showing suspicious deposits. Text messages between Denton and local gang leaders. Each piece of evidence landed like a hammer blow. Lieutenant Denton's operation is simple, Marcus explained. He protects actual drug dealers while his officers plant evidence on innocent citizens. The wrongful arrests boost his department's statistics while providing cover for the real criminal enterprise. The church erupted in murmurs. Reporters rushed to make calls. Smartphones lit up as social media exploded with updates. A commotion at the back door drew everyone's attention. Lieutenant Denton himself pushed through the crowd, his face red with barely contained rage. 2 more officers flanked him. "This is slander," he announced, trying to sound authoritative. But his voice cracked slightly. "Agent Reed is under investigation for corruption. These accusations are desperate attempts to—" "To what, Lieutenant?" Leah interrupted. "To expose the truth? We have documented evidence of your dealings with the Santiago drug cartel. Wire transfers, surveillance photos, sworn statements from officers inside your own department." Denton's face paled slightly. Behind him, his officers exchanged worried glances. "You can't prove any of this," he said. But the confidence was gone from his voice. Marcus held up another document. "This is a federal warrant, Lieutenant. The FBI's Public Corruption Unit is very interested in these connections. They're executing search warrants on your precinct as we speak." Camera flashes exploded around Denton. Reporters shouted questions. The lieutenant raised his hands, trying to maintain control, but his usual smoothness had vanished. "No comment," he muttered, backing toward the door. "No comment at this time." As Denton retreated, Marcus caught Mrs. Jackson's eye. She nodded slightly, tears streaming down her face. Other families stood, forming a wall of solidarity. The sight of their unity made Marcus's chest tighten with emotion. Leah stepped close to him, speaking low. "Look at him run. Not so threatening when the spotlight hits him, is he?" Marcus watched Denton practically sprint to his car, trailed by shouting reporters. Cockroaches always scatter when you turn on the lights. The church buzzed with new energy, hope replacing fear, determination drowning out doubt. Phones rang as news spread through the community. More families arrived, eager to tell their stories. Marcus felt the weight of his badge in his pocket. For weeks, it had felt like a burden. Now it reminded him why he'd chosen this path in the first place. Not just to enforce the law, but to protect those the system tried to crush. As cameras continued flashing and reporters rushed to file their stories, Marcus knew this was just the beginning. Denton wouldn't go down without a fight. But for the first time since that traffic stop, Marcus saw real fear in the lieutenant's eyes. Marcus sat in a dimly lit FBI surveillance van, watching multiple screens showing different angles of the abandoned warehouse. Special Agent Sarah Chen adjusted her headset beside him, coordinating with tactical teams positioned around the perimeter. "All units in position," she reported. "Warehouse is clear except for our undercover. Thermal imaging shows no unexpected heat signatures." Marcus nodded, his eyes fixed on the main entrance. They'd spent weeks setting this up. An FBI agent had infiltrated the Santiago cartel, feeding Denton information about a major drug shipment. The lieutenant had taken the bait, agreeing to provide protection in exchange for a hefty cut. "Movement at the south entrance," a voice crackled over the radio. 2 vehicles approaching, marking them as Target 1 and Target 2. The first car was a patrol unit, Lawson and Briggs, right on schedule. The second was Denton's personal SUV, its tinted windows reflecting the security lights. "Remember," Marcus said into his mic, We need to catch the handoff. Don't move until my signal." He watched Lawson step out of the patrol car, carrying a large duffel bag. The corrupt officer's usual swagger was muted, his movements twitchy and nervous. Briggs followed, practically shaking as he scanned the darkness. "Those are the drugs they seized in last week's raid," Agent Chen confirmed. "The ones that mysteriously disappeared from evidence." Marcus's jaw tightened. Those same drugs had probably been planted on innocent people before being seized in staged arrests. The cycle of corruption was about to end. Denton emerged from his SUV, wearing plain clothes instead of his uniform. He carried himself with his typical authority, but Marcus noticed subtle signs of stress. The lieutenant kept touching his neck, adjusting his collar. "Audio feed is live," a technician announced. The warehouse's hidden microphones picked up their conversation clearly. "You got everything?" Denton asked, his voice echoing in the empty space. Lawson hefted the duffel bag. "Full shipment, boss, just like you asked. We logged it as destroyed in the system." "Good." Denton checked his phone. "Buyer should be here soon. You two stay sharp. This is a big one." Briggs shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, about Agent Reed's evidence." "Shut up," Denton snapped. "That's handled? Focus on tonight." Marcus exchanged looks with Agent Chen. They needed Denton to implicate himself further, to make the connection explicit. A third vehicle approached, their undercover agent posing as the cartel's representative. Right on cue. The FBI agent stepped out, playing his role perfectly. He carried a briefcase and walked with the confident menace of a drug trafficker. "Evening, Lieutenant," the agent said. "Brought my friend's payment for your ongoing professional courtesy." Denton smiled thinly. "Always appreciate good business relationships. Officer Lawson has your merchandise." Marcus leaned forward, watching intently. They were so close. Lawson unzipped the duffel bag, displaying dozens of wrapped packages. The undercover agent inspected them, while Denton grew visibly impatient. "It's all there," the lieutenant said. "Now the payment." The agent opened his briefcase, revealing stacks of cash. 50,000, as agreed. Plus a bonus for helping us avoid those DEA investigations. Denton reached for the money. Marcus's finger hovered over his radio button. "Actually," Denton paused, "make it 60. Agent Reed's little church presentation is costing me more than expected in cleanup." That was it. The final piece they needed. "Execute," Marcus commanded. "All units, move in." The warehouse erupted in controlled chaos. FBI tactical teams crashed through doors and windows. Bright lights flooded the space. Agents seemed to materialize from every shadow. Weapons drawn. "FBI, hands up! On your knees!" Lawson immediately dropped, raising his hands. Briggs stumbled backward, tripping over his own feet. But Denton reacted like a cornered animal. He shoved the undercover agent aside and sprinted for his SUV. Marcus was already moving, having slipped out of the van moments earlier. The lieutenant made it 3 steps before Marcus caught him, driving him face first onto the hood of his own vehicle. The impact knocked the wind from Denton's lungs. "You're under arrest," Marcus said calmly, securing the handcuffs with practiced efficiency. Denton thrashed, his face contorted with rage. "You don't understand what you're doing. I have connections. I have—" "Spare me," Marcus cut him off. "You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." Around them, the operation concluded with mechanical precision. Lawson and Briggs were quickly subdued. Evidence teams photographed the money and drugs. Agent Chen coordinated with local police to secure the scene. Marcus turned Denton around, forcing the lieutenant to face him. The man's carefully maintained image had crumbled. His expensive shirt was torn. Sweat plastered his hair to his forehead, but his eyes still burned with defiant anger. "You think this changes anything?" Denton spat. "The system always protects its own. You'll see." Marcus stepped back, watching other agents take custody of the lieutenant. He moved to the shadows, observing as Denton was led to a waiting transport vehicle. The rage on the lieutenant's face slowly gave way to something else, the dawning realization that his empire was truly crumbling. His political connections couldn't save him from federal charges. The evidence was overwhelming. Agent Chen appeared beside Marcus. "Clean operation," she said. "We've got enough to put all three away for decades. Plus, their cases will be reviewed. A lot of innocent people might get another chance." Marcus nodded, thinking of Mrs. Jackson, of Tyrone, of all the families whose lives had been upended by these corrupt officers. Justice was finally rolling forward. He watched silently as the transport doors closed on Denton's furious face. The lieutenant's last gesture was a hateful glare in Marcus's direction, impotent and desperate. 2 months later, Marcus sat in the crowded federal courthouse, watching Leah Johnson prepare her notes at the prosecution table. The trial had drawn national attention, filling every seat with reporters, activists, and families affected by the corruption. Mrs. Jackson sat in the front row, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Behind her, dozens of other families whose loved ones had been wrongfully imprisoned waited with barely contained emotion. Their presence filled the room with a heavy weight of anticipation. Lieutenant Carl Denton sat at the defense table in an expensive suit, his attorney whispering in his ear. He'd lost weight in custody, but his arrogance remained intact. Next to him, Officer Lawson stared straight ahead, while Officer Briggs couldn't stop fidgeting. The bailiff's voice cut through the murmurs. "All rise. The United States District Court for the Northern District of Georgia is now in session. The Honorable Judge Patricia Martinez presiding." As everyone settled back into their seats, Leah stood, her posture radiating controlled intensity. The prosecution calls Lieutenant Carl Denton to the stand. Denton walked to the witness box with measured steps, taking the oath with practiced smoothness. His eyes swept the courtroom, lingering briefly on Marcus before settling on Leah with subtle disdain. "Lieutenant Denton," Leah began, her voice clear and steady, "let's discuss the night of March 15th at the warehouse. You testified earlier that you were there conducting a legitimate police operation. Is that correct?" "Yes, that's correct," Denton replied confidently. Leah nodded, then gestured for the court technician to dim the lights. A large screen displayed high-resolution security footage from the warehouse. "This video shows you accepting $60,000 in cash from who you believed was a cartel representative. You specifically mentioned the extra $10,000 was for, and I quote, cleaning up after Agent Reed's church presentation. Could you explain that?" Denton shifted slightly. "That was taken out of context. We were conducting an undercover—" "Let me refresh your memory," Leah interrupted, playing the audio. Denton's voice filled the courtroom, crystal clear. "Actually, make it 60. Agent Reed's little church presentation is costing me more than expected in cleanup." She turned back to him. "What exactly needed cleaning up, Lieutenant?" "I decline to answer that question," Denton said stiffly. "Let me help," Leah continued, pulling out a stack of documents. "These are bank records showing payments to local media outlets, coinciding perfectly with the smear campaign against Agent Reed. Payments that originated from shell companies linked directly to your personal accounts." The jury leaned forward, several members taking notes. Marcus watched their faces, seeing the pieces click into place. Leah's questioning continued relentlessly. She presented evidence of falsified police reports, testimony from officers who'd witnessed tampering, and financial records showing unexplained deposits to Denton's offshore accounts. When Officer Lawson took the stand, his usual swagger had vanished. Under Leah's precise questioning, he crumbled, admitting to planting evidence on dozens of innocent people. "And who ordered you to target specific individuals?" Leah asked. Lawson glanced at Denton, then back at Leah. "Lieutenant Denton," he said it was about numbers, about making the department look good. He chose who we stopped. Officer Briggs proved to be the final nail in the coffin. His nervous energy translated into a flood of detailed confessions, recounting dates, names, and specific instances of evidence tampering with perfect recall. "We kept a separate logbook," he admitted, voice shaking, "for tracking which stops were real and which were staged." Lieutenant Denton made us memorize the code system. The prosecution presented the logbook, its pages filled with damning evidence of systematic corruption. Marcus watched the jury's expressions darken as they examined the exhibits. During closing arguments, Leah stood before the jury, her voice carrying years of pent-up fury at injustice. "This case isn't just about corrupt officers. It's about a system that allowed powerful men to destroy innocent lives for profit and promotion. It's about families torn apart, futures stolen, and trust betrayed. The evidence before you isn't just proof of guilt. It's a record of human suffering." The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. As they filed back in, Marcus felt his heart pounding. Mrs. Jackson reached over and squeezed his hand, her eyes fixed on the jury foreman. "On the count of conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, how do you find the defendant, Carl Denton?" "Guilty." "On the count of evidence tampering?" "Guilty." The verdicts continued, a steady drumbeat of justice. Guilty on all counts for Denton. Guilty for Lawson. Guilty for Briggs. The courtroom erupted in emotion. Families hugged each other, some crying, others cheering. Reporters rushed for the exits, racing to break the news. Mrs. Jackson buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with relief. Marcus finally allowed his shoulders to relax, releasing tension he'd carried for months. He watched as Denton was led away in handcuffs, the lieutenant's mask of control finally cracking to reveal raw, impotent rage. Leah made her way through the celebrating crowd to Marcus's side. Her eyes were bright with vindication, but her voice was soft. "This is just the beginning. The review board will examine every case they touched. There are going to be a lot of reunion dinners in the coming months." Marcus nodded, thinking of Tyrone Jackson and countless others who might soon taste freedom. The system hadn't won this time. Justice, slow but certain, had finally arrived. The celebrations continued around them, a cathedral of joy and relief building in the courtroom. Families who had lived under the shadow of injustice for years embraced, their tears falling freely. The corrupt empire had crumbled, and in its ruins, hope bloomed. The gates of the state prison creaked open under a bright morning sky. Marcus stood beside Mrs. Jackson, both watching intently as figures emerged from the concrete building. Her hands were clasped tightly together, trembling with anticipation. Then Tyrone appeared, carrying a small box of belongings. He walked slowly, almost hesitantly, as if the open sky above him might disappear. He wore civilian clothes, now jeans and a white T-shirt that hung loose on his frame. 3 years of prison meals had left him thinner, but his eyes still held that same quiet dignity Marcus remembered from their first meeting. "Tyrone!" Mrs. Jackson called out, her voice breaking. She rushed forward, wrapping her arms around her son. They held each other tight, tears streaming down both their faces. Marcus stayed back, giving them their moment. "My baby," Mrs. Jackson sobbed, touching Tyrone's face like she couldn't believe he was real. "My baby boy is home." Tyrone hugged his mother again, then looked over her shoulder at Marcus. Their eyes met, and something profound passed between them, an understanding that went beyond words. Tyrone gently released his mother and walked toward Marcus, extending his hand. "Agent Reed," he said softly, "I don't even know how to thank you." Marcus gripped his hand firmly. "No thanks needed. This is how it always should have been." Mrs. Jackson wrapped her arms around Marcus, catching him off guard. "You gave me back my son," she whispered, her tears soaking into his shirt. "God bless you, Agent Reed. God bless you." Marcus patted her back awkwardly, his own eyes growing moist. He thought about all the nights he'd spent building the case, all the threats and intimidation, the temporary loss of his badge. Looking at Tyrone's face in the morning sun, he knew it had been worth every moment. They walked to the parking lot together, Tyrone occasionally stopping just to look at the sky or touch a tree, as if reacquainting himself with the world. His mother kept one hand on his arm, like she feared he might disappear if she let go. "What's the first thing you want to do?" Mrs. Jackson asked her son. Tyrone smiled. "Maybe just sit in the backyard for a while. Watch the birds, smell the air." He looked at Marcus. "What happened to them?" "Lawson and Briggs. 20 years each," Marcus replied. "Denton got 30. The review board is going through every case they touched. More people will be coming home soon." Tyrone nodded slowly. "Some of the guys inside, they lost hope, stopped believing anyone would ever listen to their truth. But you listened." Marcus thought about his own moment of despair, sitting alone in his kitchen with threats on his phone and his career in shambles. "Truth has a way of coming out," he said. "Sometimes it just needs a little help." They reached Mrs. Jackson's car. She opened the trunk for Tyrone's box of belongings. 3 years of life reduced to a single container. The sight made Marcus's jaw clench. "I hear they reinstated your badge," Tyrone said, catching Marcus's expression. "Yesterday morning," Marcus confirmed. "But that's not what matters. What matters is fixing what's broken. Making sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." Mrs. Jackson touched his arm. "You're a good man, Agent Reed. Don't ever let anyone tell you different." As they prepared to leave, Tyrone turned back to Marcus. "Can I ask you something? That day they arrested me, when they planted those drugs. How did you know I was telling the truth?" Marcus thought back to the case files, to the pattern he'd discovered. "Because your story stayed the same. Every detail, every time you told it. Lies change, but the truth is constant." Tyrone smiled. "My mama always said that. Truth don't bend, baby." He mimicked his mother's voice, making her laugh through her tears. They said their goodbyes, and Marcus watched them drive away. He stood in the parking lot for a long moment, thinking about all the other families still waiting for their reunions. His phone buzzed, a text from Leah about another case they were reviewing. The drive back to the courthouse took him past familiar streets. The spot where Lawson and Briggs had pulled him over seemed smaller now, less threatening. The memory of that day still burned, but it had transformed from a wound into a catalyst. Marcus parked and walked toward the courthouse steps. Other lawyers and officials nodded to him with new respect. His fight hadn't just exposed corruption. It had reminded people that the system could still work when good people stood their ground. The afternoon sun warmed his face as he reached the top of the steps. His gray wool overcoat caught the breeze, flapping slightly. A young black officer passing by stopped to shake his hand. "What you did, sir," the officer said earnestly. "It gave a lot of us hope. Showed us we don't have to choose between the badge and doing what's right." Marcus shook his hand firmly. "There's still work to do." "Yes, sir. But now we know it's possible." Standing there in his reinstated DEA jacket, Marcus felt the weight of his badge differently now. It wasn't just a symbol of authority anymore. It was a tool for change, a means to protect those who needed protection most. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of approaching rain. Marcus straightened his coat, thinking of Tyrone's face as he breathed free air. One man's freedom wouldn't fix a broken system, but it was a start. Sometimes that's all justice needed. Someone willing to take the first step, to stand firm when others backed down. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.